Great. So welcome to Data Week. Welcome back if you've been to some of our other sessions this week. Just some housekeeping first. So this session is being recorded. Please make sure that you've had a look at the JGI Code of Conduct, or you know where to find it. That'll be going into the chat now. Make sure that your microphone is muted, unless for any reason we ask you to unmute it, but we'll let you know if that's the case. And you will see two forms coming into the chat box. So one is a registration form, just lets us know that you're able to come here today. It's just 2 questions. And at the end, we'll have a feedback form, just letting us know if there's anything we can improve. Really helps us to plan our events. So that'd be really helpful if you could fill that out as well. And just so you can definitely find all of these things that be like making their way to the chat box, what'd be really useful is if you could go there now and just introduce yourself, say your name and maybe your role. And I'll just have a look to see how that's going, if everyone is finding the chat box. Cool, that looks good. So can I have the next slide, please, Phil? Okay, just to tell you a little bit about the Jean Golding Institute, we're a university research institute, and that means that it's our role to facilitate interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary collaborations inside and outside the university in our area, which is data science and data intensive research. And we do that in a number of different ways. One of the main ways that we do that is events. So you've noticed maybe that we've had a lot of events on this week. Those can be everything from networking to training to keynote talks. We do a co-working session every week where you can come and work on whatever data science you're working on. We have Journal Club in data science and ethics that runs every 2 weeks. So these are some of the things that you can get involved in. We also offer seed corn funding, and we have an Ask JGI like mailbox where you can ask any questions about data science, and me or one of the other data scientists will help you, and if we can't help you, we'll find someone who can help you. And lastly, we manage the relationship between the University of Bristol and the Alan Turing Institute, which is the National Institute of Data Science, of which Bristol is a member. So we let everybody know about all of the funding opportunities and fellowship opportunities that come up through the Alan Turing Institute as well. Next slide, please. So this is a little snapshot of Data Week. We've got 40 different events that are going on this week. We've already had more than 1,000 attendees so far this week. And we've still got this afternoon and tomorrow like chock full of events. So if you would like to sign up to any more, please feel free to do that. It'd be great to have you. Next slide, please. And this slide is just a big thank you to everybody who, or all the organisations that have made Data Week possible. So we can't thank all of the people individually, but we can just give you an idea of how many people have contributed to putting on all of these free events. Next slide, please. And so this is how to keep in touch with us and make sure you hear about all of the events and opportunities that come up. So we're on Twitter at JGI Bristol. We're tweeting this week about Data Week at #BristolDataWeek, so please join the conversation there. We have 2 versions of our newsletter, so if you're internal or external, you will get the most relevant things to you in our JGI newsletter. I'm sure there will be a link going in the chat. And we're also on LinkedIn. Next slide, please. And lastly, I'd just like to invite you to our showcase event, which will be happening in February 2022, hopefully in real life. We are renting out the M Shed. It's got the Wildlife Photographer of the Year exhibition going on at the same time. We're going to have big keynote speakers, exhibitions, workshops. So like, it's really all going to be happening. It's going to be open to the public, and the last one we did was really, really popular and really successful, and we're really looking forward to doing it again. So yeah, please do join us there. Next slide, please. Oh, that's back again.
Oh.
Cool. So now I'm going to hand over to Phil Plummer. So he is the Impact Development Associate for the engineering faculty, and he looks after devolved translational funding for the faculty, supports impact-focused and industrial-focused research bids, and provides training on impact. So take it away, Phil.
Thanks very much, Natalie. Hi, everyone. I'm going to start by immediately doing some bad Zoom etiquette and looking very unfriendly by turning off my video when I start speaking. I'm not being unfriendly. The reason is that I'm having some audio issues with my microphone, and turning off my video means that I can lean forward and shout into my laptop without you having to see quite that much of a close-up of my face. So, hi everyone. As Natalie said, I'm Phil Plummer. I'm the Impact Development Associate for the Engineering faculty. So I work with UOB researchers to realise the potential industrial applications of their research. That may be through getting a funding application over the line or helping write a route to market or many other activities. I'll warn you that this is going to be quite a fast-paced session. We have 50 minutes and want to fit in 4 speakers plus questions. So we're nothing if not ambitious. But we're doing that on purpose. We don't want to provide here a completely comprehensive deep dive because we found that actually it's better to do that one-to-one. And both Benoit and myself are happy to speak to anybody who's interested in any of these opportunities one-to-one and really get into the details of that, the eligibility of their project. All we want to do today is create a spark. If you're a researcher, it may make you think that you have some findings that may be useful to X company or X industry. If you are from industry, you may think, well, I have a problem that could be solved through working with somebody who works on Y. The format essentially is going to be a very brief overview of 2 of the key translational funding mechanisms we use at the University of Bristol, and an example project from each of those explained by the researcher who did it. By translational funding, we're keeping our definition to the simplest terms. It's essentially funding that bridges the gap in development between early stage research and its commercialization. And today we aren't limiting that by applying particular technology readiness levels to it. So the first mechanism that we use is impact acceleration accounts. The University of Bristol has 2 impact acceleration accounts of relevance to the JGI community. Essentially, an IAA is money that's been devolved from research councils to the universities to support impact-related activities. The term impact sometimes suffers from too many definitions. Either it's too vague, and you can see here the UKRI definition, which I think is quite vague, or it can be too specific. You can get things like Research England listing all the different potential kinds of impact, and it's a bit difficult to get through. What impact is not is continuing research with the promise of it being useful in the future, and it's not collaborative or contract research. What it is taking the findings of an existing grant and beginning the process of applying them to solve a problem with industry. Now, the IAA can support any type of impact, not just commercial. It can be policy impact and public engagement impact, but this talk really is about commercial impact. EPSRC have done IAAs for some time now, and UOB has had an EPSRC IAA since 2012, and it's grown quite significantly since then. Many ref impact case studies started life as an IAA project, and it's by far the biggest in the GW4 region. I think it's actually twice as big as the closest other. We tend to get very good feedback on what we do, and traditionally we're funded in 3-year tranches. The last time that happened was between 2017 and 20, when we were given £3.7 million. Recently, for reasons at the research councils, that's been happening on a 1-year top-up basis, because essentially what they're doing is trying to bring in a process of harmonizing all the different impact acceleration counts. So this will look different after April next year. But before that happens, we do have a final round of open competition closing on the 5th of July, and I would encourage anybody who's interested in that to get in touch and talk about any potential projects that would still be able to run until the 31st of March next year. Additionally, we do get underspend from projects, and if there's enough, we plan to run another round specifically focused on early career researchers in September. That's because we found that IAAs are very useful mechanisms for fostering new relationships between researchers and industry, and it's a priority for us to get more early career researchers doing that. We use IAA money both strategically and for open competition. We use about 65% of that money on open competitions, and that's what I'm going to be explaining here. If you follow these boxes with your eyes from left to right and then down onto the second line, the schemes we offer form a kind of informal escalator. And some people use it in that way. Some people start with a small award and then come back and move up as the technology develops. But you don't have to do that. The schemes are there to de-risk the technology and get it to a place where it can attract more substantial external investment. The only thing I would say really is that if it's your first time doing this kind of work, you should go to the top line, the three at the top there. The ones at the bottom really are for projects working on technology that the panel would have seen before. I'll start with the Exploratory Award, which offers up to 15K because it's the most common one. It can be used to do things like hire an RA to do some work, extend a contract that's coming to a close, or keep on a promising PhD student if that's something you need to do. The money can be used to buy equipment up to 10K as long as it's proportionate to the project, and things like travel and subsistence, although obviously that hasn't been used much in the last year or so. And there's space to justify this on the application. What's it used for? Well, we're very open about how the money's used as long as it aligns with the purpose of the IAA. I would say that lots, maybe a majority, use it to build a prototype to take out to industry, or to spend some real time with stakeholders, really getting to grips with what it is that's needed. It can be also used for things like market assessment. What I would say if you want to use it for market assessment is that it's better to find an appropriate consultant who does market assessment work professionally rather than saying you're going to do it yourself. Another scheme is the Early Career Kickstarter Award. Although this is the smallest one, I'm not starting with this one because essentially it tends to be used in the same way as an exploratory award, but on a scaled back basis. The definition we use as an early career researcher is pathway 1 or 2 staff on grade J or below. In practice, what that means is research associates, research fellows, but not PhD students. The disadvantage of it in relation to an exploratory is that it's less money, but the advantage is that the money is ring-fenced, so the success rates are higher, and you can always come back for an exploratory later once you've done this initial work. In previous rounds, the money's been used to build a demonstrator to take up to industry. Other times, early career researchers really want to do it to spend some time mapping a certain industry and going out and spending time speaking to those companies. And that's an absolutely fine way to use it, as long as it's linked to a longer term plan to bring the technology to market, and it's not presented as a kind of travel award or networking award. The only thing I'll say on that is that early career researchers can apply to pretty much all of these schemes. They're not limited to this ECR one, but we've introduced it as a recognition of some of the specific challenges faced by ECRs. Knowledge transfer secondments, a larger scheme, which is 6 to 12 months and it offers up to 50K. Usually this is used to buy out time of someone to go and actually do the secondment. It can be used to pay someone full-time for a shorter period or part-time for a longer period. The secondments can be outward or inward. People at any career stage, and it can be with any company who are interested in the technology. They don't have to have been a collaborator on the original grant. Often these are used to do things like improving tools or techniques by making use of a partner's facility or data. Follow-on awards are the most open of all. If you go to the guidance on our website after this, you'll see many fewer examples of how this can be used in relation to the other accounts. That's because our view is that if you've done an IAA project and it's been successful, the project should dictate the next steps, not us. Maybe you've demonstrated that it works outside the lab, but don't know enough about the market and you want to use it for market assessment, that's absolutely fine. But the key thing with the follow-on awards is to work with us, and we can make sure that it's an attractive proposition to the panel. The key criteria really is that it's a previously successful IAA award and that there is an obvious next step that another funding mechanism can't cover. The commercialization award, it tends to be the kind of end of the road award, and as such, we received the fewest applications for that. It's not the only award through which you can pursue commercial goals. All of them can be used to pursue commercial goals. It's just that this one is called the commercialization award because it's for the most developed projects. And at this stage, you'll be delivering a much more highly developed technology. Consequently, the risk for the partner on board is less and more is expected of them. So if you go for a commercialization award, you're expected to provide a 10 to 50% cash contribution plus in-kind support. Now, for all of these, if you can get a good contribution from a partner, your application is going to be strengthened. I would say usually ECR Kickstarter awards don't have a cash contribution, but some kind of in-kind one. I would say 50-50 on the exploratory awards are able to get a cash contribution. But with all of them, the more cash and the more obvious the commitment from the partner, the higher the chance of success is going to be. The other thing with the commercialization award is that Bristol has research commercialization managers. For the engineering faculty, the RCM is Carolyn Jenkins, and any commercialization award needs to be written in conjunction with the research commercialization manager. STFC also have an impact acceleration account at Bristol. STFC are newer to the game, and as such, the numbers involved are smaller. But of course, the big advantage is that it can support researchers who've been STFC funded who miss out on the EPSRC money. Again, its purpose is very similar. It's intended to take research fundings closer to commercialization, support knowledge exchange, and enable impact in all forms. University of Bristol has a 2021 IAA of 50K, which is being allocated through open competition in its entirety, and the deadline for that is the 7th of July. I should flag that applicants must be current or previous recipients of FCFC funding. There's just 2 schemes to go through on this one. Everything I said about the EP exploratory awards pretty much applies here. And it can be also used to support secondments, but bear in mind that it's slightly less money to support those, but the same kind of activities, but obviously you can get 20K here instead of 15K. And there's also a collaborative development award to provide assistance to those looking to develop engagement with external partners. I think probably very similar to the ECR Kickstarter award mentioned previously. This has been very brief and whistle-stop on purpose because, as I say, we tend to find that better conversations and more meaningful conversations happen through one-to-one conversations with myself. If you're interested in the IAA, you can find it very easily on our website just by searching for it, and you can come in and get in touch with me directly. And I'm more than happy to help scope a project, talk about the eligibility of the project, what next steps might be, and anything involved in it. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over to Chris McWilliams, who had a very successful IAA project in a previous round, and he's going to talk about his experience with it.
Thanks, Phil. I just realised there's a lot of slides and I didn't factor in that you would be having to click through them. I don't know if it's easiest if I just wave or say click when there's a slide movement.
If you say click, I'll move it on.
Okay, great. And I'll try and be quick because I know we're pushed for time. So click. I'm Chris McWilliams. I'm Research Fellow in Engineering Mathematics, and I was going to just try and tell the story of this translational research that I've been involved in, which has really been facilitated by the IIA. And I'll kind of talk through it chronologically, but with focusing on how the IIA has really made it possible. So it started back in 2016, and roughly those photos at the top are the people that were responsible for getting this initial EBI Catalyst fund. At this stage, in fact, click. And click. So the 2 people who had really worked together before were the 2 highlighted photos at the top. Chris Bordeaux is an intensive care consultant at the BRI, and Ian Gilchrist is actually now head of the School of Psychological Sciences. They had done work together before on the psychology of clinical decision-making and kind of demonstrating that really simple digital interventions can actually change behavior quite dramatically in a clinical setting and to the benefit of patients, because they were able to make doctors meet clinical guidelines much more reliably than they were being met before. So that was kind of the foundation. And it was the IIA that we eventually applied for was based off of Ian's previous EPSRC grant around decision making. But there was also this thing that EBI funded 12 months of really kind of exploratory research using the intensive care data to try and, well, it was very undefined at this stage. The title of the project ended up not being at all related to what we did because no one had looked in detail at the data. It was a totally new interdisciplinary collaboration with lots of new team members being brought on board. So it was a very much exploratory 12 months. And we identified that an interesting topic to look at would be intensive care discharge, and specifically trying to predict when patients can safely leave the intensive care unit. And so we did some initial machine learning to try and look at if we can solve that problem, and the results looked quite promising. So click, Phil. We applied for what was then the University Strategic Research Fund to continue with the machine learning, but also to allow us to write an application to the IIA, really to fund my time to write that application. And click. We applied for a knowledge transfer secondment because we realized, okay, we've done some preliminary machine learning, which looks promising, but we can't really produce the end goal that we wanted was to produce a decision support tool that would really help doctors and nurses with the process of intensive care discharge. But we felt like we couldn't solve that problem without really having me as the data scientist working in a very embedded way at the hospital and learning kind of the operational and clinical processes that are used at the hospital. So that's why we went for the secondment option, and I was the secondee. I was seconded at 80% full time for 15 months. Phil said previously these are up to 12 months, but the hospital put in some cash as a direct contribution towards my salary. And it was a really productive 15 months. We published this machine learning work that we had been doing, but also I just learned a huge amount about the way things work on the intensive care unit. I was shadowing ICU doctors on their ward rounds. I was attending meetings where they were discussing whether or not patients should be discharged, and just really gaining a lot of knowledge, what as a data scientist you would call domain knowledge that just would not have been accessible otherwise. And it was this which really kind of facilitated everything that's happened since then. So if you click through 3 times, Phil, there's a bunch of pictures trying to illustrate just how fruitful it was. So I came to understand their clinical systems, the data systems that they use, the IT infrastructure. I worked very closely. I had a desk in the office where one of the data entry teams sits, but I was also meeting regularly with various members of the IT department that do kind of data-driven reporting for finance and for clinical purposes. So it was fascinating, and we ended up publishing this paper that's there at the bottom, which was a methods paper on how to make intensive care data more what we called research ready, but really just usable as well by NHS planners within an NHS trust who really didn't have good access to this data. And there were a lot of data quality issues, which we managed to solve a few of them during that secondment. So coming out of that, we felt like we were in quite a good position to sort of take this work to the next step. And if you click through, Phil, the hospital funded 2 days of my time. So sort of off the back of that secondment, the hospital then funded 2 days a week of my time, basically to write a larger research grant application, because we realized, the end goal is definitely to kind of get this into clinical practice in the NHS. The NHS very much being sort of what Phil was referring to previously as the industrial partner. In this case, the NHS was the partner. But we realized, there's quite a lot of developmental stages before we can actually put this safely into clinical practice. And we identified this NIHR/NHSX AI award as the appropriate funding stream to apply to. It was new when we applied to it, but it's really about trying to get AI into practice in the NHS, which is exactly what we were trying to do. So we applied to that and were very lucky to be successful in the first round of that award. Click. And this project called SMART, started in February this year, and it's really exciting to have it funded. It's at phase 2, so the AI award comes in different phases depending on what technology readiness level you're at. We applied to phase 2, so the first 18 months we're still doing kind of research and development work in 2 different NHS trusts, and then the second 18 months we're starting to do kind of an evaluation stage where we collect preliminary data on safety and efficacy of the decision support tool. This just would not have been possible without that secondment. It's, you know, we had some very basic machine learning results, but it was really the secondment that unlocked the kind of collaboration and the knowledge that was required to get to this stage. And there's a bunch of other stuff that's come out of it as well. I'll whistle through it because I think we're short of time. If you click, Phil, these are all things that sort of we consider to be impactful that also came out of the secondment. Data and Donuts is a series of workshops that we set up at the BRI. In pre-COVID times, they happened every 2 months. Hopefully we'll be able to go back to that again. But the idea is to get university researchers together with clinical staff at the hospital to talk about the ways that data science could solve problems that they're having as consultants and nurses. We built a dashboard for the Nightingale Hospital, which was meant to help doctors manage increased patient caseloads that were being predicted at the beginning of the pandemic. We've helped the BRI get some funding from the Health Foundation to do kind of a project that's hopefully going to raise the profile of data science within the trust. And we've done a bunch of networking with intensive care units at different trusts to talk about what they can hope to achieve with data science and the data that they're collecting. Click. One of the things that came out of Data and Donuts, we had a particularly kind of productive session where we talked about this thing called the National Early Warning Score and how basically, despite the fact that it's used across the NHS, it's a bit rubbish and doesn't do what it's supposed to do. So we've now got a project with the Southwest Better Care Partnership trying to improve on that and personalise the early warning score to different subtypes of patients. The other reason it's excited to be involved in this partnership is they're putting together something called the system-wide data set, which links GP records with social care records, with hospital HES data, a bunch of other data sets, linking them all together for all patients in the region, BNSSG, so that's about 1 million NHS patients. And that is a really exciting data resource that's going to be made available soon to both NHS planners at the CCG and university academics at the University of Bristol. And we have just literally, if you click, Phil, we've just applied for funding from the IIA follow-on fund, which Phil mentioned, based on our previously successful KTS award. This is kind of an offshoot of that in a slightly different direction, where the end goal is to produce a large, hopefully nationwide intensive care research database based on something they've done in the States called Mimic, where MIT released a load of very nicely cleaned up intensive care data. We think there needs to be something similar for the UK. And this IIA follow-on fund is hopefully going to fund the first step of that, which is harmonising the Bristol intensive care data from the BRI and from Southmead. So we're yet to have confirmation if that's successful, but if it goes ahead, that should be very exciting as well. So if you click through, I just wanted to say thank you again to everyone in Red who's been really supportive throughout this story, you know, this journey that I've just described. And yes, thanks to the IIA, because it would not have been possible without their support.
Fantastic, thanks for that, Chris. That was great. I think we'll keep flying through the agenda. So Benoit, we're on to you next.
Hello. Hi, Phil. Thank you. So hello, everybody. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today about knowledge transfer partnerships. So my name is Benoit Welch. I'm a K2p specialist at the University of Bristol. So essentially, I'm an expert in a funding scheme called knowledge transfer partnerships, or K2p as we call it for short. So my role was created very recently. So this is my 5th week at the University of Bristol. It's been a whirlwind start. My role was created because the university's building a portfolio of K2p projects. We've got 6 at the moment. I think the next speaker's John's going to talk about one of those projects in detail, which is going to be great. We'd like to get a lot more. We think it's the university and we both think it's a fabulous scheme, and wonderful things happen when we get the right ingredients for a K2p project. So the aim of my role, my job really is to help academics and company partners to win funding for K2p projects. So that means that I help with bid development, bid writing, project concept development. I also help with finance, administration, the whole caboodle. Recruitment as well, because for every K2p we recruit a graduate to project manage the project. So they're wonderful job opportunities. So if there are any graduates on the call, I would please take note. So at the bottom, my contact details. I've been doing K2p for about 12 years now. I was at the University of Leicester before, the Montfort University before that. It's a fabulous scheme. I'm a K2p zealot, as you can probably guess. Always happy to talk about K2p. So if anybody wants to talk about it, please do get in touch. There's my email. Just look me up on LinkedIn. And there's also the website, the URL for the K2p website. So it's lots of information there. So just Google K2p, essentially. So next slide, please. Oh. So what is a K2p? In my mind, essentially a K2p is an innovation project between a university and a business with the overall aim of developing new products, processes or services. So the K2p is a funding mechanism. Essentially, it's managed by Innovate UK, the government's agency for innovation. You probably know they have a variety of funding mechanisms, many different funding mechanisms. Some of them focus on feasibility projects or proof of concept projects. Some are about building collaborative R&D consortia. K2p is quite different. The focus of K2p is very much on introducing new skills into a business so that they can innovate. John's going to talk about a project, but I'll give a very quick example. So I worked recently with an accountancy firm, very established accountancy firm. They knew everything there is to know about accountancy, about finance, but they also knew that the market's changing because the impact of AI and data science. So the directors spotted an opportunity to innovate, to develop new products, new services in automated financial products and services. So they know everything there is to know about accountancy. They know about how to develop new services and products. What they don't know is science. They know nothing about data science. So the question they have is how to get that capability into their company. It's very risky, it's very expensive to go out and ask consultants to bring those skills into your business. You can try and hire that knowledge in, that's also very risky, very expensive. And the rate that data science and new technologies is progressing, there's new knowledge coming out all the time. So the alternative is to apply for K2p. So a K2p funding allows companies to team up with the university, to partner with the university, and find that expertise in the university. So if there's a university that is carrying out research into data science, cutting edge research, that partnership then allows the partners to transfer that knowledge of data science into the company, machine learning and data analytics, so forth, and create a new capability in the company. So that company now has the capability, a data science capability, a data science department, as a result of the project, and they are now developing new products, new automated financial products. So I hope that's a very quick example. What else to know? The funding. The funding covers up to 2/3 of the project costs, and these projects can last anywhere between 1 to 3 years. So it's quite substantial funding. 50% for larger organisations, 2/3 for SMEs. It's a fairly open scheme. You can apply every 2 or 3 months. And the grant success rate is more than 80% nationally, which is, if anybody knows Innovate UK funding rates, that's very high. So it's a great opportunity for companies and for academics. Next slide, please, Phil. So the benefits are not just to the company, they are both ways. They've come back to the university as well. So I've just put 3 things down here. The university particularly likes K2p because it's really fabulous for delivering impact from research. All the evidence that's generated is superb for sort of for case studies, ref impact case studies, for example. K2p is brilliant for partnership building. So we don't just see a K2p, we see a K2p as the start of a great relationship, if you see what I mean. So K2p is normally about 2 years, but we're looking to really use these to cement long-term collaborative relationships with great companies, 10 years or 20 years. That's what we're really looking for. And when you get K2p right, there are loads of really good outputs that come out of them from the university's point of view. We're looking for follow-on projects, excellent for getting papers and publications, case studies, student projects, placements, new research themes, and so on. So next, please. For the company, of course, the main benefit is the grant. So the up to 2/3 of the project budget is funded. So that effectively financially de-risks the innovation process for companies that are looking to take the, traverse the valley of death, so to speak, and get a new product or service to market. So it's very helpful to have that. And every K2p is has to be underpinned by a really impressive business case. So that reference to return on revenue 6-to-1 is basically Innovate UK. I think they've done some research and shown that for every £1 they invest in these projects, it results in £6 of profit for the company partner over a certain time, about 7 years. So as an average, that's quite impressive. So for what a company's getting, they're getting 10% of an academic's time, which is effectively academic consultancy at a very reduced rate over a couple of years. They get a highly skilled graduate who works full-time as a project manager for the project. It's worth mentioning that K2p is eligible for R&D tax credits as well. So it makes sense in a variety of ways. Next slide, please, Phil. So I think we're missing that should say benefits to the graduate. So once the K2p is set up, we have a company partner, we have a university partner, but for every K2p, we always recruit a recent graduate. We call them the Knowledge Transfer Associate. And their job is to project manage the project, the K2p. Their job is to combine the company knowledge with the academic knowledge and to create a new product or service or process, and then to embed that knowledge in the company. So it's a critical role. It's actually a 3-way partnership at K2p. So it's you've got a company partner, a university partner, and a graduate. So there are great benefits for graduates if you're interested in taking on a K2p. So a K2p is a fantastic career experience for graduates. You actually get ownership of a key strategic project that is critical to a company. And when does that ever happen in real life? When do you actually get ownership of a key strategic project? It's a great launch pad for your career. The personal and professional development, that is a key part of K2p. At least 10% of K2p is dedicated to professional development. And we have a budget, a personal development budget for every K2p. For a 2-year K2p, on average, that's about £4,000. So we estimate that for a 2-year K2p is the equivalent of 5 years career development in a normal job. And lastly, tomorrow's innovation leaders are K2p associates today. So the government sees K2p associates, these graduates, as the business leaders of tomorrow, essentially. K2p is on average about 2 years. It's like an extended job interview. At the end of that, most associates are offered a job, and a very good job. So they're in a very good position at the end of a K2p to be the product manager, for example, or a technical director. And many of them go on to take director level jobs in the future. So it's excellent career development. Some associates go back into academia as well, by the way. So the point of that is that there are multiple benefits to all three partners. Next slide, please, Phil. Oh, and that's it really. It's just a whistle-stop tour. I think there are my contact details again. So happy to answer questions anytime. Please do look me up. Please do get in touch through LinkedIn. And I think we're going to hear from Dr. John Cartledge next about one of our K2p projects.
That's right. Thanks, Benoit. Okay, so hello, everybody. I'm John Cartledge. I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Computer Science here at the University of Bristol. My research interests involve AI, machine learning, and data science, particularly applied to problems and applications related to financial services. So today I'd like to tell you a little bit about a knowledge transfer partnership that I lead. Next slide, please, Phil. Okay, the Knowledge Transfer Partnership, or K2p, is a collaboration between the University of Bristol and Claritum Limited, which is a company based in Bath. Claritum is an e-procurement company that offers an online cloud platform for optimizing business processes. Let me introduce the K2p team. So on the left is me, I'm the academic lead. Paul Barker on the right is the company lead at Claritum. And together, Paul and I wrote the K2p funding bid, and we managed the project from either side. In the middle, that's Raj Shukla. Raj is the K2p associate who's employed full-time on the project. The topic of the K2p is automated spend analysis and procurement management. This is a relatively small 2-year project that began in September 2020, so we are now around 1/3 of the way through. We have a total funding budget of around £200,000, so that comes from 2/3 from Innovate UK and ESRC, and 1/3 from Claritum, the company. The budget is for research and development of a new market-leading commercial spend management platform driven by state-of-the-art research. Funding pays for my time on the project and some costs for equipment and travel, but mostly the money goes to employing Raj full-time on the project. As K2p associate, Raj also receives significant training budget, and he undertakes regular training courses run by the K2p network. Unfortunately, due to COVID restrictions, Paul and I have actually yet to meet Raj in person. So hopefully that will change very soon. Next slide, please, Phil. So let me tell you about the problem that the K2p is trying to solve and the commercial opportunity that it's hoping to exploit. Now, many large companies spend a lot of money on products that they need to deliver their daily business. For instance, let's consider a leading supermarket chain. The supermarket spends more than £100 million per year on printing costs alone. That's for items such as in-store marketing banners, posters, labels, letters to customers, and a whole host of other printed materials. Now, if this spending is well managed, it's possible to make great savings when you're purchasing. For instance, a supplier will offer significant bulk discounts if you are ordering printed materials by the truckload rather than buying items individually. However, a lot of spending is not well managed. Often spending is ad hoc and small scale, with individual employees buying single items when needed, such as when stationery runs out. And much of this spend is not well recorded. The supermarket chain estimates that as much as half of all of their print spend, that's more than £50 million per year, is not well categorized. Now, there are some companies out there which offer the service to categorize and analyze spend data. However, as you can imagine, this is a long, labor-intensive process, and it comes at a premium cost. One of the leading companies offering this service will charge £160,000 per year to perform monthly categorization of spend data. However, that cost can be money well spent. A full spend analysis can easily lead to total savings of more than 10%. So for a supermarket chain, that could mean a potential saving of £10 million per year in print costs alone. However, this type of manual spend analysis is far too costly for many companies. To solve this problem, the K2p project aims to develop methods for automating the classification of spend data using machine learning. This will reduce costs significantly and will allow smaller companies to benefit from low-cost spend management and analysis. Next slide, please, Phil. Now, most companies of a medium or large size will have lots of spend data in their procurement systems for purchases that they have made over time. However, a lot of this data is in the form of free text descriptions that can be difficult for a non-expert to understand. Here's an example on the right. I literally have no idea what product this describes. The approach that we are taking for classifying these descriptions is called supervised machine learning. Initially, the user uploads spend data to the platform and then manually categorizes a subset of examples. These examples are then used to train machine learning models to recognize item categories from their descriptions. After training, models can then be used to quickly classify any new data that is uploaded. If the user spots any errors, these can be manually fixed, which is additional data for the model to learn and improve. In this way, the longer the user interacts with the system, the better the categorizations become. Next slide, please, Phil. Using this method, we have now developed our first proof of concept application. A screenshot of the interface is shown in the slide. Users initially create an account and log into the cloud platform through their web browser. Users can then upload a spreadsheet of spend data with some example rows that they have manually classified. The model is then trained, and the rest of the spend data is automatically classified and presented to the user on the screen. We see the classified data on the right-hand side in the colored cells. Now, if classification is correct, the user can confirm this by simply clicking the thumbs up button. If they spot an error, then these category errors can be manually edited. These confirmations and edits are additional information on which the model can learn, thereby improving further classifications. Now, we've recently tested the system with Alistair. He's a spend classification expert who's been working for more than 20 years in the printing industry. Now, initially, Alistair manually classified 800 rows of data as training examples, which took him around 2 days of work. These classifications were then used to train the models, and the trained models were automatically classified the remaining rows of data. Now, the overall accuracy of classification was greater than 80%. And also, Alistair was able to check and confirm the classification of further rows of data at speeds 5 times greater than when he performed the original classifications without the support of the system. So immediately, this demonstrates 2 possible uses for the system. First, the system can be used as an intelligent assistant to support manual classification of data. When used in this way, the system enables an expert to classify much quicker, 5 times quicker than they otherwise could. This can therefore dramatically reduce the costs of performing a full classification exercise. Second, the system can be used in a fully automated fashion. After an initial short period of training, the rest of the spend data can be automatically classified and analyzed very quickly, in minutes rather than in months. Now, while the automated classification is not perfect, an accuracy of around 80% should be able to generate a reasonable summary of total spend, thereby opening up the ability to make significant procurement savings. Now, more likely, companies would take a mixed approach of both of the previous approaches, updating errors where they are spotted and rerunning analysis repeatedly until there are no obvious large mistakes. In this way, rather than spend £160,000 per year for monthly classification, a company could generate similar analyses by having one of their own employees spending some time training and interacting with the system. This has potential to significantly disrupt the market for spend management, allowing even the smallest of companies the opportunities to benefit. Results from these initial experiments have been submitted to an international conference. However, it's important to note that these results are really only a preliminary baseline, a first attempt that we will build upon and improve. We fully expect the final application to be much more accurate and efficient as we continue the project. Next slide, please, Phil. We aim to have a full commercial application developed and deployed by June 2022. And Claritum anticipate that the application will be able to generate more than £1 million of revenue over the following 3 years. The cost of the system will be relatively cheap for users, but we expect the number of customers to be relatively high. Now, once the data is categorized, the system will produce a full spend analysis report and will be able to suggest cost savings, areas of wastage, and allow customers and suppliers to make contact through the app. In addition, the current demo has already generated interest from other companies who can see further opportunities for commercial exploitation. Once spend is well classified, it becomes possible to understand the full supply chain, including how and where all products are made. This enables companies to understand their supply chain risk. For instance, if there is a natural disaster in a particular part of the world, it will be possible to immediately see the impact that this will have on supplies. Will there be a scarcity? And can we quickly offer alternative suppliers to mitigate this risk? Also, it becomes possible to perform what is known as carbon hotspotting by quickly searching spend to identify the cause and volume of carbon emissions. For example, one could search for all spend containing plastics and look to switch to a more sustainable alternative, such as paper or card. Performing this kind of what-if analysis, it becomes possible to quickly quantify the likely effect on carbon emissions if, say, a fast food chain is considering moving from plastic to paper straws. These ideas have potential to form the basis of future K2p bids, and early stage discussions are currently underway with a company called Carbon Quota. So that's nearly all from me, but before I finish, I'd like to end by saying that for me personally, the greatest benefit of taking part in a K2p is working with real data on real problems leading to real world solutions. I encourage other academics to do the same. Thank you for listening. I hope you found it interesting. Thank you.
Thanks, John. And today will surely go down in history as a remarkable day because we had 4 speakers with 4 presentations and pretty much nearly kept to time. So I think if we have any questions now, the speakers have got this in their diary until 1 o'clock, so we can answer them. If we don't, then both Benoit and myself are available to speak to people at any time about their potential projects. Oh, Natalie, we can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, we do have a couple of questions, so maybe we can just ask a couple of them now. So there's a very kind of general one here, and I think maybe you answered it for your part, Phil, but maybe less for the K2p part, which is what makes an application an attractive proposition or likely to succeed.
Do you want to go for that one first, Benoit?
Yep, just trying to find the unmute button. Well, just very quickly, from my point of view, it's the K2p. There are 3 partners, as I mentioned: the academic team, the company team, and a graduate. From the funders' point of view, getting the right partners around the table with a great project idea. You always have to have a great project idea to start with, having a great partnership to deliver it. So. Wonderful academic team, and I think that's you know, it shouldn't be too difficult to prove at Bristol. We've got some great research expertise, and the company, a really good company partner that's got real ambition to grow and to innovate. So that's probably it. The ingredients: great project concept and project partners. If you've got those, you'll get funded.
And I guess working with you guys is also a good way to make sure that you've got an attractive proposition as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Might want to ask John what he thinks there, what helped him with his project.
Yeah, so I had really great help from Red. So I wouldn't have had a clue how to write the proposal, the business case. But yeah, with the help, it became quite a simple process. I agree with what Benoit said. I would add one thing that Innovate UK really care about the business case. So the company has to be able to demonstrate that there's a market and that there will be revenue. But that's kind of for the company. That's the company's problem rather than the academic's problem.
Cool. So maybe just one or two more questions. Let's see how we go. So the question that was upvoted here, which is, what is the role of the K2p graduate? So kind of how do they spend their time? I guess it's different for each project, but a little bit more detail on that would be great.
Do you want to go first, John? I've just got an intruder.
Okay, I can do. So in my K2p, so Raj, my associate, he's working full time on the project. So he's doing training, which takes maybe 1 day a week. He runs, he's involved in lots of courses. That's mainly from a kind of business and project management perspective. So he already has a good technical background. He's got a PhD in a similar area. But day to day, he's working on this. So he's building models, he's performing experiments. He's officially employed by the university, but actually he sits, or at least if it wasn't for COVID, he would be sitting in the company office. So you're working with the company directly.
Cool. So I just want to, because I know some people are leaving now, so I just want to say, please remember to fill in the feedback form. So I'm sure the link will be appearing in the chat any second now. And then I'll ask one of the next question was for Chris McWilliams. So it was a more kind of data, it was more kind of about the project really, which was what kind of data quality issues did you encounter and how did you resolve them?
I'll try and answer it very quickly, but there's a lot of data. You wouldn't believe how much of a mess that intensive care data is. It was the clinical information system was designed to replace paper charting, and it does that quite well, but the back-end database is a complete mess. And for example, you can define a concept like heart rate could be defined in multiple ways, and some admin person can change the way that that's defined at a random point in time. There's so many things that can break. One of the things we did was map the data, the concept to a SNOMED, a data ontology called SNOMED CT, which is a medical concept ontology. I don't know why they didn't do that when they designed the system, but that makes the data a lot more usable. And then missing data was the other big problem. And then, something like pain score might not be recorded, but is it not recorded because they forgot, or because they didn't think the patient was in pain, or was it a data corruption issue? And the kind of working really closely with the doctors helped us improve our understanding of why data was missing in different cases.
Okay, cool. So I think that's all we have time for, but that was really interesting. And I guess if anyone has any more questions, they can get in touch with you guys. I'd just like to thank you all for speaking and for being part of Data Week, and thank you to